Hi, John Ebrington here. Thank you for looking in on my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about how probation's changed really. From my perspective, how the job of a probation officer has changed over the years. Certainly when I first started in probation, there was a lot more variety in the job. Although we worked hard, I think possibly we had a bit more time, and it enabled us to work possibly a bit more creatively. For me, it's kind of the split of probation 2014. I kind of viewed myself more as a free-range chicken, and then post 2014, I think I left in 2014, but since that day there was a split, and the job changed fundamentally in that probation became responsible for supervising many more people coming out of prison. And in a way, it kind of changed from working creative with people who were just starting out on crime, on probation orders, and trying to stop them going up the escalator of crime. It was like you were working with people who knew the system, were tougher, and they were coming out of prison, and this is a tougher job. And as well, quite jumpy really, because there was an expectation to enforce the order, but many people lead very chaotic lives and find it hard to comply with the reporting requirements and things like that. So obviously the focus needs to be on those at risk, but I think the police have played a bigger role. So really, going back to years ago, when I first started in probation in the 1980s, it kind of felt you were more like a free-range chicken. And the lovely thing was that we used to talk to each other more back then. We used to support each other as a team. We would consult with each other. We talk with our manager, but also our colleagues. And the job was much more varied. You might be one day a week at court, another day you'd be back at the office, another day you might be on the road visiting people in prison. Much more varied. But now, post 2014, more specialised jobs, much more emphasis. You might just have a whole caseload of people coming out of prison. Less scope for creativity, more enforcement possibly. And they become like battery hen chickens, really. And high workloads and really jumpy, actually. An environment of probation being blamed for things going wrong. And for me, I've written a book just to say this. Here we are, You the Sentencer, John Ebrington. What I'm trying to put over in the book is, why don't we as a society think a bit more about stopping people offending in the first place? An exercise I used to do with offenders was we would kind of talk about people's life stories. Your mum and dad, tell us where you were born, what was it like growing up, what were your friends like, what did you like doing? And we take people right back. What was primary school like? How did you get on? Secondary school and so on. And somewhere in that story are the factors very often for people offending, particularly those that persistently offend. And I think we as a society, I'm trying to encourage people in my book, let's think more broadly, and let's think about stopping people going on that sort of escalator or going on that conveyor belt to crime. Focusing on people coming out of jail is almost too late. We need to be focusing on people's early lives, to be honest. Most probation officers will be able to tell you that anecdotally. That is the key area we as a society need to be focusing on. And, it's really worrying because, for example, I noticed that in my home area, kids being excluded from school in my home area in 2023 went up by nearly 70%. And I know anecdotally, and I'm sure there's statistics to support this, that many kids who are excluded from school do go on to become offenders. Now that's saying something, isn't it? Do these children really need to be excluded? Are we giving excluded children enough support? What's going on? Why are children being excluded? What is that about? You know, let's focus on these sort of issues. That's what I'm trying to urge. Also, people stereotype criminals and they just put them all as one bag. But actually, many people who get into trouble are victims, you know? And one of the factors of the Knife Project in Glasgow is that they focus on the victims. And they say, look, you have been a victim of a knife crime. Please do not go round with a knife to support yourself. There's no point in it. Don't do it. Because, and so on. All right? Now, you know, and because that sort of, in Glasgow, they did this sort of tough approach, but also very supportive approach and fast-acting approach to crime, prioritising it through the courts, it was quite successful, you know. So there's lots of lessons to be learned. So that's it, really. Probation, in my view, has changed from being free range, more quality work, to more battery hen-like work, sadly. But I think, you know, there still is a lot of scope for doing really good work, you know. But unfortunately, the split of 2014 was disastrous. And that was instigated by politicians. And, you know, I think as a society, we need to think more broadly out of the box. And we need to look at, you know, things like how good are our politicians in this country. I point out in my book, during the expenses scandal, sad to say, but you were more likely to bump into a criminal in the Houses of Parliament during the expenses scandal than you were in the high street in your local town. You know, that is saying something, isn't it? There'd been gross abuses of bad practice from the politicians in our police force. And there's been a lot of cover-ups over the years, you know, the Hillsborough inquiry, the Blood inquiry, you know, the post office scandal. All these things are outrageous in my view. And, you know, we should be focusing as a society on these sort of things. And I think we need to make our political system better. We need to have better non-corruptible people as MPs, and we need to really think about who we're voting for. And less people are voting, and I think they're becoming really disillusioned with our politicians. So that there's a lot of issues out there. It's all very well to blame the poor old probation officer who sat in an office, you know, for somebody that's done this and that. But actually, the braver probation officer is about giving people chances sometimes, is about nurturing positive change, is about helping people to get a job, is about helping people sort out problems, you know, not purely just sending them back to jail, you know. It's a tough one, isn't it? But it's tricky. But we need to have much more joined up thinking and think about the conveyor belt to crime and stopping it. That for me is the main message. 2, probation needs to be much better resourced, and I'd like to see more focus on probation orders and manpower towards that, rather than people coming out of prison. Really, for me, it's for the police to make sure that they're complying by their licence conditions. But what tends to happen, I think the police are having more influence onto probation and have been pressurising probation to recall people, I suspect. There were the beginnings of that when I was a probation officer. And I wonder, really, whether you know, and the police need to be, what was happening was, when I was a probation officer, was the police were pressurising me to recall people, and then they would, when somebody reoffended, then they would stop prosecuting the person and stop even writing the witness statements and the summary of evidence and all that they committed a new offence, and they were trying to get out of work and get me to recall the person. But really, a person should be recalled when they're charged with a new offence. It doesn't mean that the police can stop doing their job, you know. And I think, actually, the enforcement of licences, more emphasis should be placed on the police to do their jobs properly rather than probation. And I'd like to see probation doing more of a social work role on the younger people coming into crime and stopping them on that conveyor belt, helping them get jobs, helping them creatively, helping them sort out whatever issues they've got, you know. Coming out of prison is almost too late. That's my view anyway. So do look out for my book, You the Sentencer, and have a lovely day now. Cheers now. Bye-bye.